Hey, Bonnie, Tommy Gibbons here, professor of the course. Great to have you and welcome. Wanted to send along a video reply here in week one just to kind of get our conversation started. Gives me a chance to say hello a little more directly and offer some feedback to what you've written in the response forums in week one, which is excellent, by the way. So thank you for your hard and thoughtful work that's evident in what you've submitted. I love your metaphor of Israel as a river in the first response forum. And what I think this helps us capture is how the river of Israel's life includes righteous people, unrighteous people. It includes curses and blessings, all kinds of drama. And at no point does it stop flowing. God continues to sustain its life across generations, whether the people are obedient or disobedient, just or unjust. And that is really key to the revelation of God, how God is unveiled in the life, the flesh of this people. And it sets us up well to understand Jesus because he doesn't come to offer something to his people that if they reject it, he will disown them or that God will abandon them, or that they don't count as Israel anymore. Instead, what we find is Jesus warning his people, being rejected by some of his authorities, by his own disciples in the end, who all desert him, and yet saying he will not forsake them. He is in solidarity with them in baptism, which is a baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. He dies the death of the curse that sort of hangs over his people so that he has faced ahead of them what is coming to his people's generation and disarmed it, you might say, from being able to claim the future of their life. So I think that sort of unconditional commitment of God with us in Jesus to his people is crucial to who he is, and it kind of counters a common assumption, imagination in the Christian tradition where the people of God is this kind of idealized entity, and God sort of sets up certain criteria or conditions that if people don't meet them, they don't count anymore. God disowns them. And it just doesn't seem to me that that's true to the biblical memory of Israel or of who Jesus is as someone who reveals God in God's fullness, according to Matthew. So, good job with that metaphor. I thought that was just a helpful way to center our own imagination of who Israel is. There's a kind of theme, I think, in both this response and your second one about an abiding tension that there is in the scriptural witnesses, including in Matthew, by the way. And the tension is this: it is that Gentile peoples, in particular expressions, pose a significant threat to Israel's life. Israel's called to guard themselves against assimilating to Gentile ways. And yet, at the same time, Abraham is told that in his future, all of the peoples of the world will be blessed. And we have all kinds of ways in which we see that blessing already unfolding before Jesus comes along. Testimony to which is the Gentile mothers of Jesus in the genealogy. So the law already prescribes ways for Gentiles to be adopted into Israel's family, to gain an inheritance of land and name and memory. This is explicit in Exodus 12, for example, with the Passover. So that's a tension. And it's that there's no sort of easy resolution to it, but perhaps in light of Matthew's testimony, we can see that the issue is maybe understandable in terms of this kind of abiding hostility that exists between Israel and Gentile peoples, where it is very difficult for them, even when the border between them is crossed in a healthy way, to pursue a shared future. So often the way they live their lives proves to be at one another's expense as a threat to each other. And What Jesus does is not suddenly sort of throw the doors open that had been closed before, because we know Gentiles have been joining Israel throughout its history, but he does something to that hostility, this disease that animates the life of Israel and other peoples, that makes them live at one another's expense, even call out to God at one another's expense. And that might be a way to frame how the relationship, that tension between Israel and Gentiles, is embodied but addressed also in Jesus, according to Matthew. We're going to see this sort of play out in spades in this really tense encounter between Jesus and a Canaanite mother who harkens back to Jesus's Canaanite mothers in the genealogy. It's a Canaanite mother, Matthew tells us, who approaches Jesus in the borderlands between where Jews are settled and Tyre and Sidon. She comes out of Tyre and Sidon begging for the life of her badly demonized daughter. And it's not some kind of sort of clean, Jesus is pro-Gentile, you are welcome now, all of the dark days are behind. No, that's not at all what we find. Jesus treats her rather harshly. She has to struggle for her own future, but Jesus, in the end, acknowledges her faith. And in that way, you might say, forges with her a future of shared life between Israel and its most proverbial and bitter enemies of Canaanite peoples in cities like Tyre and Sidon. So that struggle that Jesus himself embodies, I think, is important as well, so that we don't cheapen this hostility that exists historically between Israel and other peoples. It exists within Israel. It exists, frankly, within each of us. And we want to pay attention to how Jesus doesn't cheapen that, but addresses it in a way that is costly, difficult, but powerful. So looking forward to sort of tracing that out with you as the quarter unfolds. You got lots of other good insights here, by the way, in this genealogy. And I don't want to belabor any points here. Just say that I was glad you took the time to name the Babylonian exile as a key uh, sort of dimension of this genealogy, because I think that that is integral to what has produced Jesus and what makes Jesus who he is in Matthew. He is a son of exile and bears the scars and the marks of that exile in his body, his relationships, as those unfold in Matthew. Thanks again, Bonnie, for some great work in week one. Looking forward to more conversation ahead. And I think trying to remember where your time zone is. I've tried to offer a variety of time zones for the live discussions on Zoom this next week. I hope that one of those will work for you. Hope to see you soon.